Traci, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's begin our journey into your good work by asking you this. 5 years ago, we were figuring this pandemic out. We
Yeah.
were really in the thick of it. So many things were unknown. Ultimately, how much of living through that pandemic has reverberated into your life and what you do today?
A lot and nothing at the same time.
Yes,
How's that for a great answer?
I get it.
You know,
I love it.
and here's the thing with the pandemic. I believe that any experience that we have is the way that we can choose to rewrite it however we want. We are the owners of our past, right? And I think the pandemic had some really incredible ingenuity that came out of it. We were forced to think differently. And especially, it rocked the HR world. Like it was like every single week, it was a different law changing. And a law would change on Monday that was different on Friday. And we're going, what the heck is happening, right? So, in that perspective, it was really good. But what it's really opened up is a huge opportunity for leadership. And it's this opportunity really around how do we truly lead to get the impact and the outcomes that the organization is truly looking for? Because we're no longer managing for booties and seats in time. We're truly managing for that very specific work outcome.
So let's get into exactly what you do now in 2025. And the way to do that always is to get kids involved. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of fifth graders. It's
Yeah.
career day. The kid in the back of the room that's the real curious one is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do
Yeah.
you answer him?
Yeah. I am going to have them tell me which kid is I'm going to separate the kids into four areas of the room. I'm going to say, "Hey, if you are the kid that likes to lead, I want you to come over here. If you're the kid that wants to read and analyze things, I want you to go over here. If you are the kid that really wants to follow a process is really great at that process, I want you to go over here. And if you are the class clown and you just like clowning around and being in front of an audience, I want you to go over here." And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the Macarena and then I'm going to have each of those groups present it to the room.
That's cool.
What we're going to do with that then is they're going to be able to see what their key strengths are and how we start playing that together.
So what did you want to be when you were in the fifth grade? What was your dream life?
In the fifth grade, I think it was a veterinarian. And then I went to school to be a physical therapist. And then I realized you had to like math and science. And then that was out the window.
So, what were these foundational elements? Take me back to your childhood. How do these seeds get planted into you to find out what makes them tick, to help them find what their place on this planet? How did that happen?
I think there was a couple of things. One is I never felt like I fit in. It was always like, you're too much, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that. And so it was a lot of that. But then it like when I got into theater and that, it was like, well, you're not this enough or you're not that enough. And, I think that that really kind of keyed into every single one of us is perfect the way we are. The key here is to figure out what makes us tick. We talked about passion earlier. Like, what's that passion? What makes us tick? And that discovery piece is so incredibly important. And so, it was some of those things around the what is my thing and what is that value? Well, guess what? We all have it. It's creating and figuring out the right fit to role and the culture inside of the organization and being on a team where we're not playing whack-a-mole on weaknesses, right? We're truly working together to play to our strengths.
So, we talked before we got on here about jazz, about
Yeah.
great jazz bands in Wisconsin that are at the high school level. I was talking about being in Kansas City, and there's always historically been wonderful bands here. And we kind of got to the point where it's all about passion because people aren't getting into jazz because there's lucrative amounts of money like they would other genres. So at the end of the day, I'm going to bring this back to the whole jazz genre. For a lot of musicians, it takes a long time for them to find their voice on an instrument. It's one thing to play an instrument, but it's another thing to find your signature sound. Like you can pick Charlie Parker, you can pick Duke Ellington. There's things that you can pick. So ultimately, when you look at your life and your career, how did you find your voice? Talk to me a little bit about your career trajectory to getting to this point. What did you go through to find your voice, to find where you belong?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to continue with the musical metaphor. I love Ben Zander. I'm sure you've heard of Ben
Yeah.
Zander, and
Oh, yeah.
and I grew up being forced to play piano, right? So it was like clunky, clunky, clunk. And there's something, what I love about Ben Zander is he talks about one cheek playing, right? Like when you get into it, like you're totally into it and you become the music, right? And for me, I was in so many different, HR roles. And quite honestly, I fell into HR because my mom was in HR and my dad was in construction. So what do? I do leadership in the trades, right? Like
Yeah.
go figure.
Yeah.
Yet the passion for that is seeing how folks can light up. But my path into that was figuring out for me where I fit and where I lit up. And and that's really connecting with others to unlock that strength for them. And it's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens from one time. You have to get to mastery level. And the only way you get to that is screwing it up 100,000 times and continuing to go back in it because there's this itch there that says, I love to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's so important is, are we chasing the money that's going to continue to change? The bottom line is, are we really ever going to make a lot of money if we're not passionate about it? The answer is no, because we're never going to be great at it.
So let me ask you this. What was the first client that you had that you knew the light bulb went off and this is what you needed to do? You needed to be somebody that helped people find their passion. Did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, and it wasn't at a client. I would say it was way before that. It was one of my very first HR jobs. I was working for a shelter workshop for the developmentally disabled. And let me tell you, these folks are incredible in the fact that they see and feel into what's happening. Like, I'd have 4 or 5 of them walk by my office every day, which was right off the production floor. And it was like, Traci, you're having a good day, or Traci, like they just sensed it, and like it was their job to lift everybody up. And then as I started doing the training pieces, that's where I started to light up. And so I think so often we need to see an example of what is possible, and Jimmy is one of them. Like Jimmy was such an example of how we can connect and bring passion no matter what we're doing.
So my son's 20, he's on the spectrum, and I get that. He can read things, a room really well, and I've been in the special ed or the sped world for a long time, and I totally get it. Um, there is a podcast that I ran into recently called the Telepathy Tapes, and there's a
Okay.
group of nonverbal kids that are autistic, very autistic, and they could read minds
Oh,
and they
that's
verified it. So like when you're talking about these individuals being lightning rods of being able to feel the room, it's like it's amazing how we label special needs and we say the word disability, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of these individuals that have savant behaviors. They
oh yeah.
have, uh, you know, overly the opposite of disability, and it's
Right.
amazing how that works.
And it really goes back to finding that right place where we can turn up that strength of any individual. I don't care what the diagnosis is or isn't, or any of those things. There is a very specific place and purpose and impact that every single one of us have. The key is finding it. And that's the trick.
So what do you think early on in your life? What do you think the seeds that were planted for you to be able to get to this point to see that, to have that level of clairvoyance? Because there's people that go through their lives and they never find what their real true, like whether it's work or otherwise what their meaning is. What was the compass that was put into you to allow you to feel that?
Oh man, that's a really good question. But I don't have a good answer for. Let me find one. Um, I I think you're the first one that's had me speechless on a podcast, Joe. Let's
Okay,
just name
that's
that.
okay. That's okay. No, you're ambling. You're getting there. It's good. It's good.
Yeah. So like I just remember those moments where whether it was a school project where I don't know if you remember this, but it was like is it a silhouette where it was like the bright light and then you had to
Uh-huh.
like um draw the shape, then you had this black versus white of your
Yes.
face.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, it's a different way of seeing who I am that I've never seen myself that way before. And I don't know why that pops up or how it necessarily ties in, but I think that there's different moments where folks have, kind of said to me, hey, here's a different way of seeing you. I had a mentor in my first manager job, in which she said to me, she goes, man, Traci, you are a pain in the ass, but you have a ton of potential. I was like, great, thanks. What's that supposed to mean?
Right.
But when you have those champions for you that see you bigger than you see yourself, and I've been incredibly blessed to have that, where we have our blind spots where, we just see how we don't fit in. We don't, or how we don't meet whatever the mold of society is. But when you have those champions that are like, here's that special thing, Traci, that you have that no one else has, it really kind of lights that up.
So who's been that ultimate champion, that inspirational force that it's allowed you, or a hero that's allowed you to become and evolve into who you are?
I would say the person that I keep falling back on, her name is Lisa, and she was that executive director that kind of said that to me, and that was early, early in my career. And since then, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go after that. I'm going to go after that. Right. And I think a piece of it is owning who you are, but also owning the pieces you're not great at and bringing in or working to have that so that it's offset.
So if you could meet one inspirational person on the planet right now that you're fascinated by, spend some time with them, anybody on the planet, who would that be?
Um, what the heck is his name? He created the gene keys. Richard Rude. Is that
Okay.
what it is?
Let me see. Hold on a second here.
Because there's something incredible with how he's pulled in human design and all these different things to like what unlocks you and your purpose.
Yeah, you're right. That's it.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So what's the abstract? I've never heard of it. What's kind of the backbone of it?
oh, the gene keys is so cool. So what it does is it takes astrology, it takes like all of the Chinese stuff, all of the some of the astronomy stuff, it takes human design, it takes all of these items kind of in and resynthesizes them. And there's a huge program that goes along with it, but it really looks at who are you and what is your life's purpose. Where's the gift that you have, but how is it showing up where it's not a gift at all? And it really takes through all of those things, and it's just been an incredibly, incredibly interesting journey, and there's so many kind of ahas that come through it. So there's a lot of meditation in it, there's a lot of those things, but it's like there's something really cool here that's having a huge shift. And I think we've all felt a huge shift since 2020. Like something's happening that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And, connection with people is very different, I'd say, than it was 20 years ago or 15 years ago or even 5. And that's one of the things I really liked about Gene Keys is how it's pulling it in. Then I just got super curious about, well, what does this mean for me? And wait, what's astrology? And what's all these things? And it just creates all these curiosities.
I'm gonna have to look into it. And that kind of idea right there is a reason why I have faith in humanity. The fact that
Yeah,
someone could pull all of those together, those very powerful on their own, but then you merge all of them together and
it's
try to it's
incredible.
crazy. That's a lot of, I mean, that's the apex of like biology meeting astrology and all of those things all together, which are huge swayers of things. I mean,
Absolutely.
your genes have so much to do with your health and with your intelligence quotient. And then
Yep.
the astrological part of it, the fact
Yeah.
that we're on this blue bubble
Yep.
rock hurtling through space, being influenced by other planets and constellations. It's wild how all of that, it's like I think about a baseball game, and I was explaining this to my son the other day. Like sometimes the broadcasters will say the wind is going out 15 miles an hour this way, and it's such a big deal in a game, and it's like it's kind of brought up tongue in cheek. But if that wind's blowing out, that game's going to be completely decided on the strength and the genome of that team. If they can really, you know what I'm saying? There's
Yeah.
all of those subtleties that we don't take into consideration.
Well, I am in Packer country. And so, as we talk about Lambeau and like, Lambeau Field and the impact
Yeah.
that Lambeau Field has on games, here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's totally true. And that is one thing I realize when I do watch a game at Lambeau Field. They are very clear about what's going on, what's coming in, how the atmosphere is affecting it, because some of those iconic weather games have been played there,
Oh, yeah. Have you
for
ever
sure.
been to a game at Lambeau?
No, I can't even imagine what that would be like. That would be crazy.
It is an experience. The energy is electric.
Yeah.
It is phenomenal.
I just don't know how Aaron Rodgers just kind of became kind of just whatever happened to Aaron Rodgers because he just always kind of seemed like he was the guy. He had it together. He was this emulsified glue, and it was like that year before he left, and since he's left, it's just like he's just kind of this big bag of marbles that's thrown out into the wind.
I don't know much about Aaron Rodgers, but what I will tell you from where I sit, what it looks like is a loss of passion and ego.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, yeah, and I think too when it comes to celebrity, and it comes to people like that, we have no idea who they really are.
No, no, not at all.
But
Not at
that would be in it. So you all hate the Bears, right? Is that just kind of synonymous between Chicago and Green Bay? That's a big
So I
deal.
will first name I'm not a huge sports person.
I
Like
got
I
you.
follow enough to kind of keep up, but I will tell you it is fun to watch the back and forth and the back and forth. And it's been really fun to watch. It's like the Bears fans are just kind of like, keep losing and keep losing. And you just have this fun rivalry. And it really is, I would say for the most part a fun rivalry. But again, I am not someone that's a
Yeah.
huge fan that's crazy passionate about it. That is not my lane. So,
Well, they Chicago almost got Mahomes, and I have to attest to the fact that Kansas City embodies that vibe that you say at
oh
Lambeau.
yeah.
It's crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's a culture. It's and that's the reason why watching them be successful has been so much fun because it's been such a diehard thing that this town's gone through, like Green Bay. But I love the thing about Green Bay is that fans are shareholders.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's totally cool. So, all right, so we'll get back on track here. So, let me ask you this. Is somebody that helps people find their way and somebody that's obviously been in the business world for a long time, every day you wake up, is your goal balance or is your what how do you approach taking care of yourself and your business? How does all that work for you?
Yeah. You know, That's such a great question. And I think that this evolves, right? What I will say is that this thing is a killer, right? And, you know, it's a routine is incredibly, incredibly important. Am working on right now, like I don't look at my phone the last half hour I go to bed or when I get up in the morning. Why? Because that completely shifts what your brain is doing. I'll journal. What are my wins for the day? Right? Like, what were my 3 wins today? And what are my 3 wins going to be tomorrow? Guess what? You have a win every single day. You have the choice to decide to write anything as a win. If something didn't go well, because guess what? There's days where it is a caca show, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, but you can rewrite those days as what did you learn? Every learning is a win. And, I think mindset is a huge piece of that. So, like that, I would say, I don't know if anything's ever truly balanced,
Yeah.
but it is what you decide that it is. And it's like I choose to get up and lift weights and or jump on the Peloton and, I feed my dogs and, it was raining this morning, but I have 17 hanging baskets. I love going and watering my geraniums every morning. I
Yeah.
know that sounds silly, but it's like this little kind of piece of joy that I get after I work out.
Yeah.
And, it's that time where I'm not listening to anything, it's almost that meditative time for me. And
Yeah.
then I've got my list from the night before of here's my 3 wins for the day. And, my days are pretty well scheduled out. There's some free time in them. But that key is knowing what your wins are going to be. They may not always happen, but it does truly set you up to be successful. and looking at if we're judging ourselves based on what we believe something should be, we're always going to be failing.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at how did I incrementally gain today? And if I made an incremental gain, that was a good day.
I always think that humans have a big heart because sometimes I'll drive by houses that are completely worn down, but their plants are well taken care of. Like they're not doing anything to the house, not much, but those plants are thriving. They're watering the plants, they're taking care of them. There's a passion that goes into that. So let me ask you this. If we were to put you in a room full of clients and people that you've worked with in an HR sense and just through your career trajectory, and you swim through that group of people and go to a podium and you can tell them one fun thing about you, one fun story, first concert, jumping out of an airplane, something that would humanize you in a different way. What fun, cool tale would you tell that room?
So my first concert, I was 17 and I went to see Fish at Alpine and I actually dreadlocked my hair.
Nice. Very nice. So that's quite an ordeal because I remember years ago I worked at a YMCA and they did that to me and it was like I could never get any of that completely out.
Oh no, no. I mean, it was like, I'm like, what are we doing? I'm
Right.
like, they're like, just hang on.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, whatever.
I had one of my best friends, his name is Brent Wood, just wanted us to go see Fish, and I did because I knew that they were kind of theorists. There was a jazz backbone. There's just so much that goes into what they do, and we had to experience it. It was really good. I mean, those guys are just they're on
Yeah,
it. They're on a different level.
it is. It's, that's fun. The other thing that I would say is if you've never taken a solo trip, go take a solo trip.
Yeah,
So I've just decided that every January is a volcano. Do you like how I just make a decision and you make it happen?
yeah,
And so I did Iceland and then I did Hawaii. And it's like every now and then, like, just like, what is it that you want for you? Because when you can feed into yourself, you are so much better in front of any client and your family
yeah.
if you've got that feeding into you that's happening.
So Rainn Wilson from the Office, Dwight, did a series on Hulu, and he's always been just a little depressed. So he wanted to find happiness. So he decided to go to all these countries, and the first country was Iceland. He went to Reykjavik, and he said that's one of the happiest places on the planet.
It is.
And just the landscapes. I had a good friend that went out there and saw the Northern Lights and all the landscapes and was just blown away. I mean, that it's like a magical place up there, you know.
Yeah. So I went to see the Northern Lights in the volcano. The volcano went off the day before I got there, and it
Oh,
it it was, snow and like stormed every day. And I was like, but it was the best trip.
yeah, yeah.
But I chose it to be the best trip, right?
That's it. That's it. That's the key. So let me ask you this. Of everything you've accomplished and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
My kids,
Yeah.
you know, and I think who I have become for in that process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I believe that I am an amazing mentor and coach. Like, and I think first and foremost, who am I? You've got some really hard questions.
Yes. Just trying to wake everybody up.
It's so good. It's so good. Um, I think so often we define ourselves by work, and that's immediately what I did because that's what society tells us to do. But is
Yeah.
that really who I am? It's like, no. I'm this human that has a huge love of nature. Having connection is really, really important, and that belonging to the organizations or the groups or the people that we're a part of. Um, you know, Adventurous and like, let's create some beauty along the way and let's light it up.
Well, I think if I look at the time that we've talked right now, I'm going to remember that you feel like it's important to go on a solo journey and you went to Iceland. I'm going to definitely remember that. You know what I'm saying? When you think about
Yeah,
us, I mean, you do have that business sense of you, and it's the bane of going to meetings and hearing kind of the same kinds of things. But when you hear about what people do and who they are and what makes them go, think about your business life and all the people that you've liked. It's like it's getting to that marrow of who they are and the
right.
stories that you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I mean, we need to have the roadmap. So let me ask you this: from the Wisconsin Tourism Department, I want to know, what is the greatest thing about the state you live in?
Um, there is so much here. If you want a big city, I mean, you've got the city life, but our North Woods are incredible. You
Yeah.
know, the the waterfalls to the lakes to the hiking. You know, one of my favorite places is and the snowmobiling's fantastic. Like if
Okay.
you've never been snowmobiling, book a trip up to like Land O'Lakes or Conover or the Phelps area. Like there's some incredible, snowmobiling. And by the way, that is the snowmobile capital of the world.
Okay. Okay.
But there's something about getting back in nature and truly being in a place and a space to figure out who you are,
Yeah.
but also to truly enjoy it without all the distractions. And that's one of the things that I love the most.
So if anyone wants to reach out, they have questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they
Yep.
go?
You can go to elevatedtalentconsulting.com, and we also have a podcast as well called the People Strategy Podcast that is not as fun and in depth as what this has been, Joe.
Well, I will put links so everybody can get there. This has been absolutely delightful. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time, and best of luck with everything. I appreciate it. What's the next trip? What's the next solo trip on your radar?
I actually don't have a solo trip yet, but I
Okay.
do have a trip planned to Italy. I'm taking some female business owner entrepreneurs to Italy for a cooking. We're going to a culinary institute in November. So
That's
that
cool.
is my next little adventure. So we still have seats if somebody wants to join us for that.
So have you been to Italy?
I have not.
My God. That's where my ancestors are from, and I've been there a few times. When anybody travels through Europe, Italy is always at the top, and the food is like a religion. I grew up. My dad was full blooded, so I know. But when you get over there, it's like you got the primero, segundo. You got all of these different layers of what you eat and do. Oh, it's so much fun. It's so
Yeah.
cool. It's beautiful. You'll love it. Absolutely love it.
I'm so excited. So
Yeah.
we're on the Ionian Sea. We're in Calabria,
Oh,
so like very southern part. Like I'm so excited.
yeah, you're going to be totally in. Well, this has been wonderful. Have a wonderful trip. Thank you so much, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe.
Great to meet you. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.